FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It is 9/25/19. Well, if you've been watching, there's the things that are going on right now, just have your head spinning in the political forum. You've seen these vaping lawsuits going on. It looks like the trial lawyers, they're through with tobacco, but now they're after vaping. And vaping, by almost any account, is far less hazardous than smoking. But no, we're going to find out differently because there's lawyers involved for sure. Well, our good friend James Hirsen is with us now. You find him at jameshirsen.com. That's James, HIRSEN.com. James, welcome back. So, hey, we got a lot to talk about. I guess we should talk about Trump first. They've got him now. They're going to impeach him for sure. He'll be out of the White House before the next election, right?
Oh, so they think. You know, we moved from Stormy Daniels to Omarosa to Michael Avenatti to Kavanaugh, and now we have the Whistleblower Story. When the Whistleblower Story first broke, the tagline was that a whistleblower who was listening in on the phone call heard President Trump pressure a foreign leader to basically meddle in the upcoming election. I mean, that was the gist of the story. And then we start to find out the pieces of it begin to slowly fall apart, as they always do. It reminds me of the Kavanaugh story where we found out that the victim has no recollection of the event. Turns out the whistleblower is not a whistleblower at all. It's not someone who listened on the call. It's not someone who has firsthand knowledge. It's a hearsay witness who may have made it up out of whole cloth, may have heard it at the water cooler. We just have no idea. And that there was no exchange made. There was no quid pro quo. We hear that even from, left-wing media sources are now admitting that there's no quid pro quo and that the supposed whistleblower doesn't have firsthand knowledge of what they're blowing the whistle on, which means they're not a whistleblower at all. They don't fall under the protective rubric of a whistleblower. And I think if we find out who the whistleblower is, we're going to find a partisan hack who is just trying to carry out another attack on President Trump. And the amazing thing is the calmness and the savvy with which the president has been dealing with the rabid members of the press corps who want to entrap him and say to him, basically leading questions about this supposed quid pro quo, which the president routinely and repeatedly refers to the real scandal where there really was a quid pro quo, and that's Joe Biden, who was basically using $250 billion in aid, as I understand it, military aid to the Ukraine as a bargaining chip to have a prosecutor fired on the eve of that prosecutor wanting to interview Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. And also, this was on the wake of Joe Biden arranging under very dubious circumstances Hunter Biden, who has zero experience in the energy field.
No ONG experience.
Zero experience in the international world, does not speak Ukrainian, was all of a sudden put on the payroll, and amounts I've heard have been between $50,000 and $83,000 a month, not paid directly to Hunter Biden, but as Rudy Giuliani points out, paid via Latvia through Cyprus to Hunter Biden, which is it smacks of money laundering.
It sure
and
does.
And then you have the China scandal as well, where We're talking about $1.5 billion coming out of China from a Chinese oligarch to a newly set up entity set up by one Hunter Biden. And so it's amazing. So, yeah, one could surmise that, either certainly that the Trump administration and President Trump himself realizes the jiu-jitsu aspect of this story and is taking advantage of it, or it was initiated by the Trump administration as a part of a nuclear truth bomb.
Yeah, well, I tend to believe it was the latter, not the former, and I think it was initiated by Trump, and I would call this the reverse wrap-up smear with a Trojan horse. Like, you give the media this great story, and Trump is pressuring the Ukraine on Biden, and the real story isn't that he's pressuring the Ukraine on Biden. The real story is the Biden story, which they have ignored. You and I have seen this story. It's been out there for months. For months we've been hearing about this, Robert, about China paying $1.5 billion about him. I mean, at least 6-8 months, but it is getting zero traction in the media. So I think Trump, knowing how the media works or how dysfunctional it is, said, you know what? I'm gonna really show them. I'm gonna create this story, and then we're going to lay it upon them, and we'll also smoke out a couple of leakers as well, because for some reason, after the Inspector General got this complaint, he notified the heads of the congressional intelligence committees, and 2 days later, the story was out in the media, which meant that probably Adam Shifty leaked the story, because we all know that he does what he does best, which is leaking. And so it's also a canary trap in there as well. And it's vintage Trump, and nobody would ever think that he could do something like that, because he's obviously not bright enough. He only made billions of dollars in real estate in the toughest market in the country because he's just not very bright, James. He just doesn't have it.
Well, yeah, it seems to be beyond that. I mean, actually, it's questionable whether Joe Biden's a viable candidate at all now. His numbers are crashing, and the media's given up on him and going for Elizabeth Warren. But the idea that Trump is capable of doing this reverse slam Trojan horse concept, it fits with. He's played the media like a Stradivarius, especially over the last 2 years. And I dare say that there is no politician who would have been able to survive the onslaught of the combination of media, Hollywood, both parties' establishment. By the way, speaking of the establishment, it's very revealing that as soon as the story came out, before really the facts had been ascertained and watched the story weaken, when the first iteration of the story, which was that, Trump is pressured, the foreign leader pressured, there was a quid pro quo, he was using taxpayer money, blah, blah, blah. Who comes out of the cuckoo clock? Mitt Romney, sounding very much like he's possessed by the spirit of John McCain. And, he's already on record saying he won't endorse Trump. Mm-hmm. Then he comes out and says it's troubling, it needs to be investigated. And it's just become sort of a knee-jerk reaction for Mitt Romney to reveal himself as a never-Trumper.
He's a loser, He's really a sore loser at that. That I ran for president and I couldn't make it. Romney played to lose. That's the fact of the matter. He played to lose. But
the amazing thing is that he has such a tin ear that he's so out of it that he somehow thinks that he would be someone that would be able to benefit, in the event, in his mind, that Trump wasn't a viable candidate. Romney doesn't realize how much the base absolutely detests him.
Yeah, he's a detestable character. And look, I don't know what he's smoking, what he's thinking, but to think that that people are going to prefer him over Trump is just never going to happen. This guy is finished. His career is finished. He's done, James, and yet he can't realize this. He just can't seem to realize it. Yeah, he can get elected senator in a Mormon state like Utah because he's a Mormon, but that's the only reason why he got elected. We all know this.
No, and he's super connected with the Mormon infrastructure in Utah. But, you know, he had a primary. If he would have had a good opponent, it's possible that he would have gone down. I still think it's possible, but, you know, his term is too long as a senator. He's going to create problems. But, you know, the only place he could really get attention is places like CNN, MSNBC. But in any case, if in fact Trump intentionally did this or whether he's using it, what's happening is that it reveals, number one, first of all, it reveals some people in the media just absolute blatant liars.
Yeah.
You know, Nicole Wallace she's on MSNBC. She was always there telling the American people that there's nothing to the Biden story when Biden himself is making a speech to the Council of Foreign Relations and bragging about he used taxpayer money to get this prosecutor fired, that the prosecutor that was after his son. The irony is that his son is given a lot of these things that no other American gets, $50,000 to $83,000 a month, $1.5 billion from China. And this is immediately after the son was kicked out of military service
for drugs,
for being a drug addict.
Yeah.
So so that's his resume.
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah.
So who's going to
great kid, old Hunter?
Kind of money? And
he was also having an affair with his late brother's wife. I mean, this guy is just total. I mean, he's really vulgar character. Let's face it. But
he's got issues. And the weird part is that if it weren't for President Trump bringing it up repeatedly, story, as you said, it's been around a long time. It would have been lost. And except for the fact that the opposition research teams of Biden's opponents are out there whispering to the press, cover it, cover it, cover it.
Yeah.
That gives them some motivation. But until this Ukrainian hit job on the president completely falls apart. Now, the president talked about, you're going to see the transcript eventually. So it seems like at some point in time, he's going to release this transcript, which is benign, and it will fall apart. But, it's strange that Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Nadler, who want to investigate everything in the world, but not Hunter Biden's very suspicious business history in the Ukraine. Now, don't discuss that. Although, where's Lindsey Graham?
Yeah.
Why isn't Lindsey Graham jumping all over this and investigating? That concerns me.
He hasn't investigated anything yet. Nothing with Spygate, nothing at all. He's done absolutely nothing. So the president's best friend there, you got to be suspicious of him as well, for sure.
Yeah. No, I can't help but be a bit suspicious because, he has a dubious background. So I think we have to be a bit suspicious of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham 2.0 can revert back to Lindsey Graham 1.5 very easily.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, then you wrote an article about the vaping scandal that's emerging. There's been all these cases of people with respiratory arrest, severe lung damage, emanating purportedly from vaping. If you don't know about vaping, it's instead of smoking tobacco or other substances, you get this e-juice and you inhale it. Now all these states are rushing to ban flavored e-juice. It can have nicotine or not have nicotine in it, but it has helped millions of people give up smoking. So that's a good thing, I would think.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Silver One Resources is an exploration and development company backed by strategic investors Eric Sprott and SSR Mining. The company is focused on its Candelaria mine project in Nevada, where there is already a historic resource estimated at 127 million ounces of silver. The Candelaria mine historically was the highest grade silver producer in Nevada, generating over 68 million ounces of silver at an amazing average production rate of over 1,250 grams per ton. The project has tremendous expansion potential as past drilling has outlined deeper, high-grade silver targets for future drill programs. Silver One is highly leveraged to the price of silver and is cashed up and poised to increase shareholder value. Silver One trades in New York under the ticker SLVRF and in Toronto under the ticker SVE. To learn more, go to silverone.com. That's silverone.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
It is, but there's like two things that are getting conflated together. And one of them is a factual thing where Juul got itself in trouble. Juul is the biggest vaping manufacturer. It's worth supposedly, reportedly, somewhere in the region of $40 billion. Mm-hmm. This is a big, big business. And what they did is they launched a series of ads that were on the social media with so-called social media influencers. We're all young people. It was marketed to young people. Mm-hmm. And they've stopped doing that, which was a smart move on their part to stop it, because that did create, depending upon the risks of vaping, future potential product liability for Juul. But right. Like there's always, what always happens, because everything is politics, this has become politicized, and the attorneys generals of many states are launching lawsuits against Juul. Here in California, in my crazy state, they're investigating Juul criminally. President Trump did talk about banning those flavored things, and there is some data to suggest that the flavored nicotine, not just flavored vapes, but that flavored nicotine creates a kind of a deceptive situation for young people, because they don't realize the potency of, continuous vaping of flavored nicotine, which is actually, they're getting more nicotine than they would have with cigarettes. And more concentrated. So there's some things, but look, this is part of the litigious society we live in. And products liability law, when it's extended to things that are sort of drugs or things that we eat or things that we use, like a vape, they've stretched to the meaning of what it is to put a defective product in commerce. And they did it with the tobacco cases by finding documents that showed cigarette companies knew there were risks, failed to disclose the risks. And that's what the trial lawyers are hoping to do with this big company, Juul, and other vape makers. But the fact is, any product has risks. And it depends on the benefit versus the risk. So for example, if you have a product that will cure a terminal disease, mm-hmm. and it happens to have a risk of death for a tiny percentage of users, on balance, society would say, hey, if we're going to cure 80% of the people that take this particular drug and stop them from dying, then we'll take the risk that out of 1 million users, 5 will die. And this is what's done. I mean, courtrooms do take that into account.
Yeah.
So we don't know the percentage. There's some very serious and very sad stories of young people who have either died or gotten very sick with lung disease, but we don't know that the individuals aren't abusing
other
the
drugs
product
or other drugs.
And the manufacturer cannot be. I shouldn't say they can't, because they are, but the idea that a manufacturer is held liable when somebody abuses the product seems to me to be grossly unfair. That kind of reasoning was used to sue firearms manufacturers, claiming that somehow they should be responsible for victims of crimes where firearms are used. And that, I would analogize that thinking as, there's a manufacturer that manufactures axes. Yeah. Axes have to cut down trees, so they have to be sharp.
Or steak knives.
Should an axe manufacturer be held liable for an axe murderer? Of course not. It's abusing. As a matter of fact, axe manufacturers have been sued when somebody mistakenly cuts off their own foot.
Yeah.
They say, well, if you are negligent with an axe, that's your responsibility, not the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. The product is being made for the purposes for which consumers buy it. And that's what vape started out, as you said. It was a way to get people, and Juul did this, a way to get people off of cigarettes. The idea, though, was that then they would stop vaping.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really occurring, because vaping seems to be, for young people, they love the cool billows of steamy smoke, and you see them everywhere vaping. And I know anecdotally some kids that they vape way too much from morning till night.
For
sure. But I think the good thing about this, Kerry, is that because of the plaintiff's bar and the filing of the lawsuits, President Trump talking about it, parents are getting to know the real deal with vapes, because I think a lot of parents were under a mistaken impression that vaping was healthy. It's just steam, they would say.
Well,
and that is not true.
But one thing I got to say is they've banned vaping on all these public places. Now, there's no such thing as secondhand vape smoke, because it's just water vapor. Once it's gone into your lungs, nobody's going to breathe the stuff in. So this reaction to it is just like banning it in stadiums, on airplanes, all these things. It's just really kind of madness here.
As I said, it's highly politicized, and no one has put this together yet, but if they really want to get the vape manufacturers, they'll just have a young Swedish girl say that vaping causes climate change problems.
That'll do it.
Then you'll have the squad and all the presidential candidates saying, not only do you have to give up hamburgers and the internal combustion engine, but vaping as well.
Yeah, that's it. I think you've got it. That girl there was totally disgusting. And how did she even get an audience? It's all political. Totally nauseating, that woman. They're likening her to the Nazi propaganda ads, the Goebbels girls of, pre-World War II. They were saying all the bad things about Jews, and right? It just...
Yeah. Oh, no, she's a dead ringer for the Goebbels propaganda girl. I mean, the pigtails and all. But, it's interesting. I mean, this is what the left always does. They exploit children, and they don't care about the kids. And they're absolutely scaring our young people to death, starting in preschool with teaching this mythology about climate change. And of course, this girl makes speeches similar to Ocasio-Cortez that, we're dying, the world is ending, doom and gloom. And, President Trump, the master troller, he retweeted a little segment of the speech of this girl, Greta is her name, Greta Thunberg,
correct,
where she was saying, the world is dying, it's doomsday, it's terrible. And he put in his tweet, oh, this is such a happy girl. She's looking forward to a bright future. And she has a look on her face like she just swallowed castor oil.
Oh, well, she saw.
Horrible look on her face in this picture that the president retweeted. And the fact is, Greta Thunberg supposedly was inspired by another group of kids that were, in fact, involved in a protest march. And guess when that was? 2018, in the lead up to the midterms, the so-called March for Lives. It was the people from Parkland, Florida, the kids marching against the Second Amendment.
Of course,
And so this was another tool of the left.
Yeah, pure propaganda.
And guess what? It was before an election. So what is this? This thing of having a bunch of kids get out there holding signs and saying it's the end of the world is to gin up a portion of the vote for the left, which is the so-called youth vote. In most states, 18 and over, although the Democrats want to lower it to 16 to get even more of them. And they've had a problem historically with that vote. They get the Hollywood celebrities to do PSAs, to go knock on doors, to do free concerts, to do all this stuff. And they say, wait, Beyonce's going to get the vote out. Taylor Swift's going to get the vote out. And then it never pans out.
Never happens.
So maybe climate change and doom and gloom will get these kids to come out and vote. And, if you can have illegal aliens vote, you can have kids vote illegally, or they can bring their grandparents to the polling booth and tell them what to do, which is what a young girl from the Netherlands did in her election. It went viral. It's co-opt your grandparents to vote. So there's all kinds of electioneering going on in the guise of this doom and gloom. And by the way, these so-called, they used to be called global warming, then they changed it to climate change. They have had predictions going all the way back to the 1960s. Going back 60 years ago, they predicted an ice age. They predicted famines. They predicted the sea levels would rise. It just goes on and on. Yeah. But Al Gore put it in his movie, put it in his books. They are never, ever called for the failure of their predictions. Ever.
Never.
And they don't believe it. The Obamas just bought a $15 million waterfront mansion. They don't believe the sea levels are going to rise. They wouldn't put their hard-earned cash into that estate.
Oh, not hard-earned. Don't call it hard-earned.
Well, yeah, right. Well, in their minds, it is.
Yeah. Very, very true. That's so funny. And, you look at it and you just have to laugh, the hypocrisy, everything else. The face on that girl when she saw Trump at the UN, you would think she was seeing the Antichrist revealed to the entire world, for vilification. She was the girl's a fanatic, and she should be ridiculed and she should be put down because she put herself out there. Whether she's a pawn, whether she's just an AOC light or whatever it is, she put herself out there. Therefore, she is entitled to any public ridicule, criticism that people throw at her. And good for them. Just because you can't say, well, she's a child, you can't attack her, then she shouldn't be out there in the first place, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah,
it's pathetic, and it's really child abuse, and it's also quite a shame that in a country like ours, where we really have a situation where students are not reading at grade level. They don't know math. They're in these poor excuses for schools, but they're encouraged to be truant, to play hooky, to skip school for political purposes. And in every urban center run by Democrats, that's what's happening.
And that's the truth. Hey, we could talk for a long time about what the president said about all of these disgusting rat-infested cities that the Democrats have spent half a century creating, these havens, these sanctuary cities. Evidently, the real sanctuary is for rats and rodents. That's the real sanctuaries. Places like Baltimore, LA, San Francisco, you can just go down the list, and they're all democratically run. What a coincidence. Anyway, that's it for now. We got to go, but find James' work at James Hirsen, HIRSEN.com. Email us, KL@KerryLutz.com. Twitter feed @KerryLutz. Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. If you're listening on a podcast, watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Really helps us when you do that. James, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.